Hi again. I'm wearing my mask. Remember, we talked about that last week, how we serve others. Today, we're going to also talk, and I'll pull my mask down so you can hear me better, about another way Jesus served and showed us to serve. He was always thinking about caring for others. So, we are building today a bird feeder. Feeding people was an important lesson in the Bible's stories. We heard today about feeding of the 5,000. That was a little boy sharing his loaves and bread, and we can also serve that way. We share in each other's company when we sit down and eat together at Good Shepherd, or when we sit down and eat together at the family table. We also share food through the blessing box for people who aren't part of our congregation but might be hungry and might not have enough money to get enough food to get them through a week or however many days. So we put food in the blessing box. We also can feed birds and other creatures in nature when it's in time of a drought or cold winter with a lot of deep snow. So we think of the creatures out in nature, and we've got bird seed to put in our bird feeder when that's completed. So you will be serving God's world with this project. We're going to use markers. At the end, we'll probably use some glue. We've got the wood kit. You're going to find in that the bottom of the bird feeder. You're going to find the piece that goes in the middle that we're going to have to line up. You're going to have the pieces that are the roof. We've got two like that, and don't think about that being the edge of the roof. We need that flat angled edge up at the top, because the next piece that'll go on after we get both of these pieces nailed in will be this piece going over. We've got all these little pieces to go around the edge, and there's going to be another corner that we're going to put around. So that's how we're going to start working on this. There are some little prep things we have to do. You're going to look for little teeny tiny holes in the ends of some of your pieces of wood. There's little teeny tiny holes in this side on the long piece. And those little tiny holes are guides for the little teeny tiny nails we're going to be using. You're going to push the nail through, and then you're going to get it into this pilot hole. But before you do that, we're going to get a container. This will help keep all your teeny tiny nails from rolling onto the floor and into the rug and never find them again until you step on it on your foot. So take your little baggie, pour your little teeny tiny nails in there. Also in that little baggie, you're going to find a little tiny eye screw. And that's going to be what we screw in the top of this to hang your bird feeder with. Now, another thing we can do is, because those little teeny tiny holes were not put in this piece, and you need them at this end too, we're going to take a tool. If you have a really sharp, pointy tool, like this awl, we're gonna put a hole in the very top, so that the center hole that is in the very center of this one will be able to have that pilot screw. And this one's going to take time, and you're going to probably need your parents' help, especially when it comes to tapping those nails. But see how I worked that in? If you don't have an awl, you can use this little teeny tiny screw, and you can work it in. You might be able to get that. You might have to get a pin. You could use a safety pin or another kind of pin if you have those around the house poked through, because the screw won't go all the way through to mark the hole where you need it to do. So you can use the little tiny nail, or if you've got a little bit bigger nail that's easier to hold on to, you can also mark where these go. I marked the 2 holes. Let's see, I thought I marked them. I marked 1 hole to get this one started. There, and I made it deeper when I got it out. I used the other hole, and you try to get it all aligned because you don't want to miss the hole. And it made a mark. Although I was off center, I can correct that by putting a little hole right beside it. And when I have my starter hole, then I can take my awl and make it bigger, so that way when I go to do my final nailing, it'll be in there. I'm going to do this also on the other side. Now, something you can do to start off before you start nailing is you can use your markers and add color. I did, and you saw some of that on the house. You can draw on all the surfaces of that. You can add your green to make grass around the edge of your house. On this one, you can see I did flowers on the side. You could add flower pots. You can do all kinds of things. You can color pieces solid if you don't want to do like I did tiles on the roof piece of mine. I started like tiling. So you can make shingles and color them however you want to do that. So this project could take a while, and I don't expect you to get it done all in one day. I might not even get it all done in one take here. Now, like I said last week, you needed a hammer, but this one's too big for this little teeny tiny nail. That hammer could get out of hand and then smash things apart that you don't want smashed apart. This is a better size hammer. Like I said, we call that a tack hammer, because basically you're not putting big nails in, you're just putting teeny tiny nails in, little tacks. And I started with making my square. Okay, hey, we're back. We had some technical difficulty, and I didn't know we had stopped, so I proceeded a little farther along the way. But that's a good thing. I found that tacking these little teeny tiny nails into the sides that didn't have very deep pilot holes, it was hard. So I ended up gluing these ends together. I had gotten 2 corners basically nailed together, but you can open up your little pilot holes like you'll still see in here, and on the inside edge of the short pieces, that you can do with this. I found out when I started working this one, it was very difficult to nail those nails in, as that wood goes into that hole, and if it doesn't come back out of the hole, it just packs in there, and it gets harder and harder as you get closer to get that nail all the way in. What I did was, first off, there aren't holes down this strip, so you have to take your piece, whether you're doing it here, on the corner piece, or here, and mark it. Now, what I did to do that was I took and put my centerpiece over the holes. I took my marker and then I just, once it was centered, I marked my place. So I knew about where to place it. And then I was able to take this, just line it up. Don't cover this centerpiece so much because you have to leave that open, because this one's got a hole that goes in and it rests flat on top of these two pieces. That's why this angle is this way. You don't want to put that angle this way or this way. You think about doing that, you might think, like, oh, it's the edge of the roof, it should angle off, but no. The angle will go here. I'm finding that. And there's a hole here, which we make bigger. And that will go to be the cover. That keeps, like when you have a house you build, you've got a cover strip where the shingles come together at the top. They start at the bottom and work shingles up, and they have to have a cover strip over here. So this acts like that cover strip, so rain doesn't get down into the roof under the shingles. So I've got it aligned. I take a little nail, I press it into the wood. You don't try nailing yet, because we need to get the guide piece. I know it's centered, so I give it a good press into the wood. I press it again. When I did the first pressing, my little hole was off center, and I don't want it off center because I don't want it coming out, splitting wood out the side. So I centered it, and that left me a little hole. I took this awl. You can use another little bit bigger sharp edge. You could use a good size safety pin to do this part. I pressed that in, made my hole deeper. Then, to get rid of that packing effect, to make the hole bigger, screws tend to chew into the wood, and they'll lift, as you're screwing in, the wood lifts out of the piece of wood you're working on. And I screwed that as far in as I could, and it started getting tight near the end. So I took it and I used my tool this way. That's how you can turn in eye bolts. Be careful, you need a bit of an angle. I undid that. I did that with all the holes. I should have done that with these pieces, but glue works. In fact, glue helped anchor the nails because the nails were loose. The pilot holes that they put in were too big. I needed glue anyway, so that's okay. So now I'm going to get my pilot holes. I'm going to put both nails in. I'm going to find out where those holes are this way. I can see and put my nails right in the hole. I bring my roof down. It goes in so much easier than the first piece I tried to nail together. That worked its way up the roof. I'll end up having to put my pilot hole in here again through this piece, but it's right at the edge, so that'll go in easy. And I'll open this up. I worked my pilot hole all the way down, being careful to try to keep that straight. See that little bit of an angle? You can correct that early on. And now it's better. It's not so much of an angle. It shouldn't be coming at an angle through and out the side of the wood. Okay, we're good on that one. I'll save the rest of it for once I get that on. Another handy thing we can do to keep this secure is we'll get our glue. We're gonna act like caulk. Seal this edge. I'm going to run that tip and smooth that glue down. We're going to do it on both sides. Run that tip. You don't have to put it right at the top. We'll put some on with the other piece. And run that down, and it dries clear. If you get too much, it dries clear. Run that down. All right. Now we're gonna let that dry. While glue's drying, you can do creative stuff like this. We're gonna put in more grass. You do more coloring if you haven't totally completed your coloring. Like on this bottom piece, you can certainly do that. This one's been, it was drying for about 13 minutes, so it was almost clear. So you got that one drying a bit. Now what we'll do with this piece, because we don't know what we're going to do with those 2 extra side holes, we know that we'll do the center hole, is we're going to run a little bit of glue. And I don't have too much sticking out. I try to keep it close to the center and the middle edge. I'm going to even put some in there. That'll help hold that screw in. And we're going to line up our pilot hole again. We may have to really work on getting this one in. Okay, now I can find the little hole that I covered up with glue. We'll know that wood will want to twist. It really smear that glue. All right. Can peek down the side and find that glue. Now you want to hold, you can use your finger. We're going to really twist that in because it doesn't have a lot of room. It's going to dig down into the wood, so it'll dig down on this. I'm going to get more glue. And oops, I forgot to put the lid on while I wasn't using it. Try to remember to do that. Okay, we're back. We had more technical difficulties, and I did get a little beyond what you guys got to see, so I'll try again. We talked about, I was ending up saying about the glue. With the new glue bottles, so that you have them for the next project and glue doesn't dry out on the tip, make sure you put that lid back on. After you clean it off with your wet paper towel, you're going to hear a click, and I'll get this closer to the phone. So that way you know it's not going to dry out. Now, we had just finished working on putting the screw in, getting this down. It would slip and slide, and I got some more glue. After we got all that down, I kind of caulked with glue in these surfaces, and that'll help once this is dry, anchored it. I know it was slipping and sliding. Even these wanted to lift off, so I pressed them back down in. I carefully worked on having them anchored. One of the things I started doing, is doing a pilot hole for this. And I used my little nail. I put it in. I set this down. I was able to tack in a pilot hole for this. But if you do that before the glue dries, it'll make these shift a little bit. So give this time to dry. After that, pilot hole was put in. I used this to open that pilot hole deeper, so it was only a few taps to get the nail in, and it worked pretty well. Again, everything was lined up. I saw that there were no holes peeking through. When I put this lid on, I could see daylight when I first, and I just made a little shift, and that got a hole, so I couldn't see daylight through. And then after I got my pilot hole nailed, pushed with a nail, pulled it back, pushed with the awl, got a little deeper hole for this to get in. We talk about the thread having catching tooth. It's like getting a hold of that wood to continue to go deeper as the screw when you turn. And I did this and it got tougher, so I just did little turns with this because this other one's in the way, and got it all the way through. And we backed it out. Fortunately, I had an extra backup, so from another pack. If you don't have another pack, if you didn't get the message, I'm going to ask Pastor to get the message through. But if you didn't get that message about that, you can come back and do this after. We'll find something out that you can use as a screw to pilot through this. And I was able to do that with this one. It shifted the way the angle is on the wood. It's not the most perfect angling, but once the glue is totally dry after you do this, then you can tap your nails in. We'll give this a little more drying time before we go doing that. I'm wiping the glue off because it'll make it harder for whoever uses this screw next. If it's all clogged up, the threads are all clogged up with glue. So. Now, this was a very tight fit, and part of my problem was the nail shifted this. So be very careful if you try to nail this. What I recommend is glue it first, and maybe not even use the nails at all. If you're brave enough to use the nails, you're going to have to do the nailing after it's on the board. The board helps support it, and that'd be tricky because that hammer might not let you get all the way in. This one does, but if you've got a different hammer, it might be you can't get all the way down with the head of your hammer. So make sure this is very smooth. If you see here, I've got a little lip. I shouldn't have it. This side came out very smooth. My finger doesn't catch on it, and that left me enough room. I have just enough room. Again, I have to do my lining up, and it was helpful that my glue isn't totally dry. I was able to turn it over. Again, I checked to make sure no light was shining through. I took my nail and I pressed it into the wood, and I pressed it into the wood again. So I got my first little hole. I wiggled that off. I took my awl. If you got a safety pin, you can use that. Made it a little deeper. Okay, the little teeny tiny awl. We've gotten with our little screw, and we've done all the way around. We've had more technical difficulties, sorry about that. Again, for the other side, we're going to finish that. You can use the awl, twist it, but I've finished this one already. I also did some other things before we put this in. Once we get the roof on, we won't be able to seal up the inside. So I used the glue, and I ran it inside like I was doing caulk. I did all those corners, even these short corners, so that it is sealed. It might catch water, so you might have to go out after rain and empty out whatever seeds are left. Then I took some glue, I took this, I put it in here. Well, we have had our technical challenges today. Pastor is on our third device trying to get us recorded. And sadly, I got a lot of project steps done. So I'm going to try to retrace back from where we stopped recording, but I'm going to be using a different set of project pieces to outline what I've done. We stopped and I was just talking about how this was tight, aligning up and getting the pilot holes in for the bottom. I first pressed in the nails, and I've done a little cleanup while we're redoing this. I first pressed in the nails. Remember that you have to be careful about how you put that box on so that it's well centered, and then we'll find out with the nails. But what I did is I slid it down into the box and created a guide to help me. I took one of my markers, and I have this setting well in front. I'm using this as my straight edge. And I just drew a line across. And that helps me line up this when I turned it over to do the pilot holes for the nails. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating this part, but there's another part that you can use. So I pressed the nail in on each side. Then I took my awl. I found the hole. I pressed the nail in the hole, got it deeper. I took the small screw and enlarged those holes. Turned them all the way in. I even used the awl and twisted it in so that you could see that. Then, with that line, I took and put some glue, not covering the holes. I just put the glue between the lines. And I'm not going to do this because I don't want to mess it up for the person that comes after. If I got glue, too much glue and it dried, then it would be hard to set that flat and have a good glue seal for the next person. But then what I did, because I was able to slide it in the box, I went down and I could see that I wasn't lined up, and I got them all lined up, got the holes through the right spot. Then what I did was I put the nails in. The nails went all the way through. They set very well, but because I had glue in there and everything's still not totally dry, I only tapped the nails in a little bit, then realigned everything. It was wobbly sitting on those nails. So while it's drying with those nails in here on the bottom that you've tacked in, I was able to just lay it on its side and tap, tap, tap. But it made it wobbly because it's like sitting on two pins. It's not got a good footing. So the glue helped me. I straightened it up and I found something I could set it on. So when it was wobbling, it was pushing the house up out of the glue because it hadn't set, and the house tipped, the bird feeder top tipped. So I'm letting it dry thoroughly in that position. You can stop the video at this point, and then we'll get back to that after it's dried. And finish off tapping the nails in. I won't be doing that for this video. I don't have time to wait for this to dry, and I'll probably be getting back before you get to this project. If I have time, when we take for week 5, and if we get that done before you see this project, you'll see me finish this. But this might be where it ends. So at the end, while it's still waiting to dry, I was still able to get the screw in. I got these nails tapped in. So I took the string that we had with the kit, or that I cut for the kit for you guys. It should be in your packet. And I'm just going to knot that on. And it's going to be ready to hang. If you haven't finished decorating your roof, you can embellish. There's other things you could add. If you had some of these jewels left over that you got, you could add them. You could make a fancy window and glue that on, or maybe try a glue dot if you have those at home. You can put them anywhere. You can write your name on the bottom, and you can fill it up with the birdseed that Pastor gave you at service, or that was included with your pack. A little bit of birdseed, and remember, when it rains, this might not drain after we've cocked it off, so you'll have to go dump out those wet bird seeds. Let it dry out thoroughly so it doesn't get moldy. So enjoy your project, and if I don't get back to you next week with finishing tapping in those nails, you can always do that. Have your helper, your adult helper, tap them in for you carefully. And I wish you shalom, beloved children of God.